That miscommunication is a bitch, dude.
Yeah.
It really is. I think it's literally the soul for every issue.
Yeah. But it's also a gateway. It's also a gateway to deeper understanding and deeper intimacy with somebody. I really feel like that everything we do is in the belief that by doing it, we'll feel better than what we feel right now.
There's a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Or you can go to therapy and speak to somebody instead of having to comment it on social media. But everybody takes it out in some sort of fashion. So I've been waiting to have this podcast for a minute, bro. I've been waiting to have this podcast for a long, long time. Finally got you on, dude.
Do it, bro.
It took you a minute.
I know. Had a couple reschedules. Life's busy, man. Life is a trip. But I hate rescheduling, but I only do it if I have to, and because I want this conversation to be as present and, enriching as possible. So
right.
It's for a good reason.
I appreciate that, dude. Yeah. I appreciate that. Plus, I see that you're always super busy with all the fucking plethora of things that you're doing. So I'm proud of what you're doing, man. I really am.
Thanks,
so
bro.
it's really beautiful to see.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I'm sure some of you guys already know who this is. This is my friend, Nimai Delgado. And I've been waiting to have this podcast for a minute now because I feel like, to be honest, out of all the people that I've met in the world, I met this guy through social media first, and then we met at a Young LA shoot. And I feel like, for some reason, I feel like I align the most. Like, I feel like we have a lot in common, at least when it comes down to the experiences in our lives, like what we've gone through, the path that we've taken. And it's just kind of cool. Like, every time I get to talk to you, I'm always connecting with everything you're saying. I'm always relating to everything that you're saying. And I just feel like it brings me a lot of value. One, obviously, because, wow, like I've met someone who's gone through the same things as me. So now I don't feel so alone, right? And that's super fucking powerful. I think it's one of the most powerful things. Mm-hmm. So just my thought is that every time we have a conversation, it's super valuable. And if possible, I would love to share that with the world, because I'm sure there will be some people out there that could draw some value from that too.
Yeah, so, bro. I'm like, I feel the same. We met, what was it? I was at like a giant Young LA shoot for the first time, but we had been following each other for a minute now. Yeah. And, I always felt most connected to like you on like just, beyond just the physical kind of stuff you were putting out. Obviously you got a great physique and like super inspiring what you've been able to accomplish. But like the moment we started chatting, I was like, oh, this dude's deep. And I fuck with him. Like I get him on several levels, and we just went deep right away. We were like in the middle of like on top of a building with like 100 other Young LA athletes, and we were talking about like open relationships, and we were talking about heartbreak and like, all this crazy shit. Yeah, I was going through a whirlwind. Dude, that was the day for me, bro. That was like literally the day. Like, man, it feels crazy to restate this, but yeah, that was the day that, like, it was my girlfriend's birthday, my ex-girlfriend's birthday. That's right, I remember now. Yeah, and her new man had put together her current birthday dinner, and like she and I had only not been talking for like a couple weeks or something. Super fucking fresh, and it's very complicated. I've talked about this on if you guys don't know about what happened, I talked a lot about this on my podcast with her, which was the second episode. I think that's my most viewed podcast at the moment. And then I also talked more about this with her on our follow-up episode. But essentially, we were exploring an open relationship for various reasons, not in order for us to explore sexuality with other people. Obviously, that is a part of it, but more so for certain reasons, such as putting us in a space where we feel like we have the opportunity to pursue the things that we may be interested in without having to feel like there's the judgment or the control of our partner. And instead, our partner is more accepting of what is it that we want to do, because we want to make sure that each of us gets to accomplish whatever it is that we want in our lives, especially at the age that we are, before we die. And, when we pass, hopefully we have no regrets, right? It's very complicated. Totally understand. A lot of people have different perceptions as well. Yeah. A lot of people get triggered by the word open relationships or polyamory. Yeah, dude. I mean, it's a taboo subject for real. Yeah. And understandably so. Most of the world has been conditioned to believe that the only successful
way to have a relationship is to be with one person until death do us part, right? That's kind of like the normal standards of what a relationship looks like. And I think, you know, in the past, relationships and marriage in particular was more of like there was an essence of like survival too. Like it was a business decision, you know, merging families to secure assets and also to secure financial stability and kind of the progression of the lineage and things like that. And, you know, these days we have so many more I guess luxuries to where we don't have to marry for or be in relationship for that type of security. We can seek out love and connection, and you know, it is a very complicated subject that if you've never had the honest conversation with yourself, would I be okay with this, from the perspective of not from scarcity and not from insecurity, but from a place of fullness and completeness and wholeness, that would I be open or available to connect with multiple people at once, and also to different degrees. Not every relationship has to be your, you know, deep, intimate partnership for life. It can just be a lesser, like, kind of level where it's just more companionship with the option to be intimate, and that's it, without any kind of strings attached. So it can be a challenge to explain that to somebody that might have a little bit of you know, trauma around cheating or infidelity or insecurity and trust. But once you know, and I implore everybody to just do your own research and explore for yourselves to see how you feel about it. But once you meet somebody that you have that level of connection with, to where you both allow each other the unconditional love and space and freedom to explore, then there's a whole other level of edges that are met about yourself.
Yeah.
And those edges come in different forms and shapes. Right. And if you have the wherewithal to explore them and confront them and have the communication skills to navigate those moments, then it can be a very fulfilling and meaningful relationship that is defined on what you both define a relationship to look like and what those agreements are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the way that I like to compare it is, imagine that you are basically like I'd say a lot of people are, some people are scared of skydiving, and some people aren't. You can choose to either go on the plane and risk doing something that's feels like it's high risk for a lot of excitement, a lot of passion, a lot of anxiety, and a rush, just to have that experience and to feel the most. Or you can choose to stay on the ground and stay comfortable, right? And you could potentially not come back alive. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I see the open relationship container. It's like, people think like, I mean, some people might have the perception that like anyone who pushes open relationships is pushing like, oh, polyamory is the way, like we weren't meant for this. There are some people that are like that. There also are people that aren't. And I'm one of those people that believes that, yeah, you can experience an open relationship. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the way. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the way for you. Mm-hmm. You know, different things, different containers work for different people. But in the end, it is simply still an experience. And from all experiences, if you are conscious about it and then you know, look back in hindsight, you can learn from. So yeah, this was simply an experience for me to have experiences and also learn from. Yeah. And it's definitely transformed me as a person, since I used to be always super fucking jealous as a kid. Yeah. But before we continue, because I know we're already on one, I wanted to finish my introduction.
For sure. This is what happens when we talk.
But Nimai is a vegan bodybuilder. I remember following him first when he actually, I believe when you got your pro card a long time ago, you got your pro card in Men's Physique. And I remember seeing this guy. I'm like, damn, this guy's vegan. He looks crazy, super fucking aesthetic. And along the ride, I also found out that you were also a mechanical engineer as well. Yeah. And just as I also left the career of mechanical engineering in order to pursue fitness, health, wellness, and even delve into the spiritual space, which is also something that I'm very passionate about. So that's one big reason why I feel like we connect in a lot of different areas.
Mm-hmm. Whenever we started talking about engineering, I was like, oh shit, this guy gets it. You know, like you've lived that life of being in. Were you in aerospace? I don't remember.
I was in mechanical.
Mechanical. Yeah. Okay. What kind of like industry was it again?
I was working for Butler Aerospace, and we were basically creating parts and stuff for Sikorsky helicopters.
Okay, cool.
But I was always delving in. was just doing a lot of general things when I was studying mechanical.
Yeah.
I did a lot of things in solar energy and a lot of alternative energies as well. Those were a lot of a lot of the projects I did. But I was actually intending to get my master's and my PhD, my master's at UCSD in biomechanical engineering, because I started realizing like, fuck, bodybuilding is really my main passion. So how do I like turn this into more of like something that you can apply to each person?
Cool. Yeah, that's great. I didn't have that realization until much after I had already started my career in oil and gas, and I had already graduated. I was kind of into training whenever I was in. I was into training whenever I was in college, but I was just getting like serious about it. I had of course, a breakup. You know, breakups make bodybuilders. I don't know if you've ever heard that terminology before, 100%. But it's so true.
The fucking YouTube channel.
Is there a YouTube channel called that?
Yeah.
Oh well,
I'm pretty sure it's a YouTube channel.
Yeah, you ask pretty much most guys that are in the gym, there's some form of heartbreak associated with why they got into training as heavily as they did.
Yeah.
And I was no different. I went through a heartbreak my last year of college, and I had to switch gyms because we trained at the same at the rec center at LSU. And she was like a trainer there. So I was like, well, can't go there anymore. And I'm just going to go find another gym. And I kind of got brought in by these trainers that trained there, and they were just kind of took me under their wing. They were like trainers by day and bartenders by night. So we would just like train really hard and then go out and just party like all night, because they would get, bartenders hook each other up everywhere. So we would just get hammered on Friday nights and then be at the gym first thing, 11 a.m. training for like 2-3 hours. And that's when I really understood like how to structure and program workouts and how to start focusing more on what I was eating. And then that carried over with me until I graduated and moved to Bakersfield here in California, where I accepted my position in oil and gas, and just quickly realized that Bakersfield, there wasn't a whole lot to do. There's an interesting bodybuilding culture in Bakersfield that I was first exposed to, where people were actually competing, and there was these huge guys just walking around the gym and bikini competitors, and I was like, well, this is like an interesting world. And again, got connected with that crowd, and then started training like that. And somebody had suggested for me to do my first show, which I did, and then ended up winning. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Like, I like this.
Your first show?
Yeah, my very first show.
That's
it was a small show. It was like a local show, natural show. And I figured, why not? Like, I had, graduated. I didn't really have many other goals. I was like, let's just focus on this and see what happens with it. The first thought of competing was just like, absolutely not. I'm in it, my costume of engineer. I was like, I'm an engineer. Yeah. I'm not going to do that. What would my peers think? What would the company think? And then I was like, I'm just going to give it a go. And I was surprised how much I enjoyed it and decided to keep doing it. And that's kind of like how I started in bodybuilding.
Damn. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Wow. So you started after you already started your working as an engineer.
Yeah. My bodybuilding career started in 2015. I did my first show, and I trained probably like 10 weeks out before the show. And I was already in really great conditioning. I just needed to figure out how to get stage lean. And at that time, I was still vegetarian. And right around that time, we can get into this, but I was born and raised vegetarian. So that's always how I've eaten. It's the only thing I've ever known. And as I was getting more into, the ins and outs of nutrition, I was, heavily relying on like dairy protein as my primary source of protein, like things like whey protein and cottage cheese and Greek yogurt, things like that. And it was really just kind of messing with my digestive system, but I just didn't think anything of it. I just thought, having the farts and the, digestive discomfort was just part of trying to get big. And ironically, I came across a video that kind of showed the inner workings of a dairy industry, and just kind of like behind the kind of steel curtain of what happens in that industry. And what I was super surprised with was that it was very similar to the gas processing plant that I was working in as an engineer. It looked very familiar with all these pumps and gauges and piping systems, and they were trying to extract a fluid and sell it as a product. And once I made this connection, I was like, wow, this is no different than what I'm doing, but just from a different source. And the source being this, conscious little creature, not little, but like, cows. And I was just thinking, damn, I don't like the way that makes me feel. I don't like the way thinking that, there's somebody just like me that's working really hard to optimize this system at the expense of these living creatures. So I made the decision just right then and there to stop drinking any whey protein, to stop eating cheese, to just give all that up, not knowing how it was going to affect my strength, my performance, my health. And to my surprise, once I learned how to adapt to more plant-based sources, my digestion healed itself. I was feeling much stronger in the gym. I had more mental clarity. I was sleeping better, and I was recovering faster. So this is like the exact same time that I decided to do my first show. So I've only ever competed fully as a vegan and had to like figure out how to go vegan and how to figure out how to compete for a show at the same time.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, how much protein do you consume a day? Would you say?
I don't count, or I don't track. Okay. I haven't tracked in like 4 years, but probably around 150 grams per day.
Okay, that's awesome, and I feel like that's literally like a perfect amount. How much do you weigh again?
Like 180 to 185.
Yeah,
I kind of oscillate between those two.
Yeah, I feel like that's totally sufficient.
Yeah.
Damn! Wow, that's amazing. It blows my mind though. Like that's so accurate, but it blows my mind just how comparable the you're working at the oil and gas company just is so similar to the dairy factories.
Yeah.
And it's kind of true. We just like put a lot of these processed foods in our bodies, and we don't really like think about like what happens with these processed foods and what do they go through, and how could that actually affect our well-being and our mental health and our physical health, and
our spiritual health too.
Right.
I mean, this is I don't talk about this as openly because it's a kind of a more abstract concept, but the main reason why I was born and raised vegetarian was for spiritual purposes. Both of my parents converted to Hinduism whenever they were in their like early 20s, late teens for my mom. And part of that philosophy is a concept called ahimsa, which you'll see, I have a tattoo of it right here in Sanskrit. And it roughly translates to compassion and nonviolence towards all living beings through your actions, words, and deeds. And that's a philosophy that, like a core value that they really try to embody. And it's basically because of like the law of karma, and everything that you do has an equal and opposite reaction. So everything that you do comes back to you in some way, shape, or form. And when you eat an animal, an act of violence had to take place. Unless that animal died of natural causes and you consumed it. If an animal was killed for you to consume, then even though you may not have contributed directly to it, you're contributing to the cycle of it by consuming it. And that energy is never created or destroyed. It's always just transferred. So that energy at the time of death of an animal dying, if you put yourself in the position of that animal, there's a lot of things happening. It's experiencing fear. It's experiencing anxiety. It's experiencing stress. It's experiencing adrenaline. All of these emotions that are lower on that vibrational spectrum, if you were to look at it, is like fear being down here and love being up here. Mm-hmm. So if you were to put that, into your body, because it travels with that energy, food is energy, travels with it, and then, it's packaged up, it's delivered, you put it on your plate, you consume it, it becomes a part of you. So part of the philosophy of Hinduism is to keep the vessel as pure as possible and be as conscious as possible by only consuming foods that elevate your consciousness and increase your connection to source or God or whatever you want to call it. So that was the fundamental reason why I was vegetarian. And I made the kind of moral justification of eating or consuming dairy products because I was like, well, you don't have to kill the cow. They're just like, squeezing the udders and getting the milk out. But unfortunately, in this day and age, it's just untrue. They go through some very terrible living conditions, and all cows, whether they are male or female, end up in the slaughterhouse from the dairy industry. So whether I was aware of it or not, up until that point, I decided, I was like, now that I'm aware, I have to live in accordance with my deepest core value, which is trying to live and operate from a place of compassion. And I wouldn't want that to be me. So I'm just not going to participate in that anymore or support that industry anymore. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes...
It's kind of like a long explanation.
No, that makes absolute sense. It's something that I've felt that I've thought about quite a lot. And I've always been conflicted about because I do eat meat. So it's something that I'm just, how can I put in how can I like really treat my body with that, higher vibrational energy, but these are the resources that I have, right?
Yeah.
So I've always wondered, like, what would be better ways for me to, like, even if I wanted to continue to eat meat, like, who could I outsource to? I know there's people who will, the way that they try to, I don't even know how to say this exactly, but I think you know what I'm going to be getting at.
Humanely source the meat. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and that's great. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not here to judge anybody about any of the decisions that they're making. Like, everybody is where they are in their path of like personal development and growth and everything. So like, my feelings about it is that I just like to share my experience because it resonates with me. And if anything that I said resonated with you on some level, then that means that there's, a calling, like a deeper calling to continue to evolve in some way, shape, or form. And it sounds like you're already on that path of like being more conscious with what you consume and where it's sourced from. And then for me, it's just, I'm on like a kind of like a further part of that progression, if that makes sense. I'm kind of like deeper in the on that side of the spectrum and everybody's like where they are in the spectrum, and it's like again, you are where you are. There's no judgment there. It's just always trying to do better.
It's cool to see that Akamaru even like sense that in you, bro. Akamaru literally always barks at everybody until like you ignore him, and then slowly over time, like over the next few days, he starts to get accustomed to you, starts to like you, depending on who you are. But yeah, from you, dude, almost like instantly, he's just like, this smells the compassion.
You can sense
That's
it, man.
funny,
I mean,
bro.
no harm to him. Just like, what's up, bro? Me and you. He's looking at me right now. But yeah. No, I mean, I've always had that kind of connection to animals. I grew up on a farm, so that also added to my like my connection to like non-human beings. You know what I mean? So I think that adds a lot of layers to my like desire to like prevent them from suffering, if that makes sense.
That does. Yeah. I really fucking love that. Something that I've been thinking about, it's just a total random thought that I feel like I want to bring up, but I remember always having I always had so much connection with animals, and I've always felt a lot of compassion for them ever since I was young. But for some reason, as I grew older, I feel like I started to lose that unless I actively made that conscious effort. And I'm not really sure why that is. I'm not sure if
it's normalized. I mean, we live in a society where it is the norm to consume animals and treat them as commodities, specific animals as commodities, and other animals as members of our family. It's a bit interesting why we have that distinction, because we kind of personify certain animals and then treat other ones as that they don't have any type of emotion or feeling associated. They're just like objects for us to, extract things from. And it's, I think that in other parts of the world, it's, different. It's taught differently. And that's kind of the culture that I was raised within. So I've always had this perspective of treating animals as if I were to be one, maybe not in this lifetime, but maybe in a previous lifetime. And once you have that kind of perspective of like, oh, this might not be my only go, or my only kind of iteration of life, then how would I have liked to be treated if I was in that position, or that position, or that position? And, at the end of the day, if it's unnecessary, if I have the choice to choose otherwise, then I will. And not everybody has that choice. Not everybody has the economic means or the options to have that choice. So that's where I like to always make that distinction too, is that I'm not sitting here on my, high horse telling everybody to be vegan. I'm just saying that, like, if we have an option to do better, then, as a society and just as an individual, I'm going to always exercise that option and encourage others to do what they feel is the better option.
I have a thought, and I kind of want to know what your input is, but I have this feeling that I kind of believe that a lot of areas, a lot of different parts, a lot of different areas of spirituality, different religions, I feel like an important facet is that they all bring you down to like this base of just mental thinking. So like in modern society, it's complicated so many things, right? There's always so many things going on in our brains. There's so many things that we're worrying about, and the smallest things become the biggest deals. And our emotions are connected to those deals, right? So now our emotions are wavering from things that technically would never really cause us actual any, physical harm. But, since our emotions are connected to it, and our emotions are literally everything that we, live on, everything that we, like, if you don't feel great, you're not going to do well. I think one important facet about spirituality is that it kind of brings us to realize, like, what are the things that truly matter? What are the bases that we need to, like, stop thinking about things like, social media or just simple problems that we end up having, and realizing, like, who is in our life, and be grateful for the things that we have, like the people that we have in our lives, the animals that we have in our lives, the place that we are, like our current state of health. Things could always be worse. They could always be worse. So I think that's a great facet that I love about spirituality, is that it kind of, I feel like all areas of spirituality tend to do that in some sort of way.
Yeah. And spirituality is kind of a broad concept, that there's, I guess if someone were to ask the difference between, like, spirituality and religion, is that spirituality is, like, on an individual level, it's a lot looser of a concept than religion, which are kind of like these defined kind of traditions and community and things like that. So I think that it's like two paths to kind of the same thing, whether you're a part of, like, organized religion,
right,
or whether you're just kind of, you're on your own spiritual path where you're doing introspection and trying to find meaning and purpose with your existence, and asking yourself these questions like, what happens after we die? How did I even get here? What does it all mean? Why am I here? These kind of, like, existential questions can lead us to, a spiritual practice that give us a sense of meaning and purpose and fulfillment, which, like you so eloquently said earlier, like, our emotions are kind of the like our experience. So if we're constantly living in a lower kind of emotional state, then our quality of life, our quality of our experience is less than, it's not as enjoyable, right? So learning how to find practices that bring us joy, that bring us fulfillment and enrichment, and deepen our relationships with other people and the things that we do, is something that I see is really valuable, because it will quite literally change the experience of your life. So that's why, like, for example, engineering, and I'm sure you can relate to this, whenever I was in that corporate system and in that corporate world, I was not connected to anything that I was doing. I was doing it purely for a means to an end, for financial stability. I did not really feel like my work was meaningful. I did not really feel like, I was a integral part of this company. I felt like I could be, I saw it, people come and go, and nobody skipped a beat. Life went on within this company, and nobody was missed. And that's when I was just like, wow, why am I really dedicating myself to this organization that would fire me in a heartbeat whenever things get tough, and don't necessarily care for my livelihood or my well-being? They care most about the price of their stock, and I'm expendable. So I wanted to find more meaningful, things to do with my time and energy, which is our most precious resource. And that's how I kind of, like, made the decision to leave engineering and take that leap of faith to just really dedicate myself to things that felt good and enjoyable and pleasant and fulfilling, and part of, like, a bigger purpose than just myself, which is allowing me the driving force to get up and do hard things and work on projects and create businesses and all the other stuff that I do, because I feel like a deep connection to the meaning of the work that I do.
So that's and from there on, you basically passed from engineering and went on to what you're doing right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. It was a process, Yeah, I worked, like I said, in oil and gas for 5 years. And, at that time I was juggling bodybuilding and social media because it was just my passion. It was always just like a hobby that I really enjoyed doing and would do it for free. And I did do it for free. You know, it's not like you get really paid to bodybuild. You know, like you don't get into bodybuilding for the money. You get into it because you love training and you love the way it makes you feel, and you love like pushing yourself and challenging yourself and building that confidence of like being able to withstand the discomfort of being under like a stressful load. And there's so many like transferable skills from like bodybuilding to like life in general.
Right.
And you can also apply that same concept to like business. So whenever I left engineering, I didn't have a coaching business or really anything. I had like a supplement sponsor, and I was just like, okay, this is my time now to really, create something that I know will work, because I'd already built up an audience and people were really kind of asking for coaching and advice. But now it's the time to really like figure out a system to be able to support and serve as many people as possible and like enjoy what I do, which means that I don't want to necessarily be in the weeds, like kind of, doing things I don't like to do, which is why like I found a business partner that was a software engineer, and we created a whole platform to where I could scale my coaching and just like show up for the part that I really loved to do, which was coaching and connection and talking to people and really guiding people to living a more aligned and meaningful life so that they, improve their quality of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, coaching, dude, was so exhausting for me. Yeah. But even then, it was still so much more fulfilling than being in the engineering space.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I'm sure there could be a lot of jobs in engineering that could be fulfilling to some sort of extent. But at least for what I was doing, I was just going to work, working for somebody else, doing something that I wasn't too passionate about. I was like, it's kind of cool, but like, do I really help anyone? Like, am I really doing anything substantial? Like, if I, once I pass away, like, what is my mark that I've left in the world? Will people like remember me for doing something for them? Like, have I done anything for anyone? And that's just all I could think of is like, fuck, dude. I just really honestly at this point, I'm waiting for 5 p.m. so I could go do the gym.
Yeah. I mean, you're not alone. I was very much in that same place, and I'm sure that many people listening here are feeling the same way with whatever it is that they're doing. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I mean, everybody has to make a living and provide for themselves. And you and I were blessed enough to have the opportunity to explore that to its fullest and then make the conscious decision that this just isn't for me. And I know, knowing what you don't want to do with your time and energy is a very important step in figuring out what you do want to do. So I don't necessarily regret anything from engineering or going through that whole kind of, chapter of my life, because it really put me in the position for knowing what I really like and love to do and create, a career out of that. So if for anybody listening, if you feel lost in that regard, just like really ask yourself the questions like, what would I do for free just because I really enjoy it? Like, what brings me the most excitement just thinking about, this thing? Or, how can I serve others using my own unique skills and talents? And normally we get a lot of fulfillment from serving, others or the community or some greater cause. And that will really give you this like driving motivation to keep showing up and working hard and really committing yourself to this like grand vision. And, that's what wakes me up every day. I quit a, 9-hour, 10-hour a day job for a 24-hour a day job. Like,
yeah,
and I work way harder right now than I do when I was in engineering, bro. When I was in engineering, I was in a cubicle and I was just like, I could show up and do like realistically do all of my work for the whole day in 1 hour, but I had to show up and be present for meetings. And I was just like, this is such a waste of my time.
Yeah, feels like it, huh?
Yeah, now I don't feel like I waste my time.
No, I feel like I don't have enough time.
Yeah.
I do way less in the day than I hope for every single day. I'm just like, I have this long checklist, and I'm like, it's always like 75% finished.
Yeah,
God.
Yeah.
At least I gotta do more what I love.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing it now.
It's just overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing it now. I'm doing it now. We're talking about
Yeah.
the shit that we want to talk about because we love it.
No,
You know?
exactly.
Nobody's putting a gun to your head and being like, hey, you got to put out this podcast with Nimai right now.
Bro, this fucking podcast is my favorite fucking thing I'm doing right now. There's nothing else I enjoy more. I mean, I do really enjoy YouTube space right now. I just feel like it's another outlet for me to be able to really show myself and then try to impact people by like basically just speaking as myself.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like most of the things I've learned in the last several years that I've really been able to apply to my daily life has been from podcasts.
Yeah.
Countless podcasts. Lex Friedman, you, who else? Modern Wisdom, Michaela Peterson, even Joe Rogan, bunch of a lot of good ones. Aubrey Marcus, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Definitely.
mean, podcasts give you definitely a great like long form content that you don't really get to experience in other platforms.
Yeah, I know.
You know, like with Instagram, you got to catch your attention with a nice picture or video, and then hopefully write something in the caption that will get people to stick around. But podcasts, like you're in it for the ride, and you're like choosing to listen to somebody for a long time.
Plus, I mean, you can't read while you drive, but you can listen to a podcast and still get some good information.
For sure.
So for you right now, you're doing coaching as that's your main source, right? That's your main focus right now is coaching. Can you tell me all the areas that you're coaching on? So I'm assuming, physical, maybe some spiritual, like what exactly is your coaching looking like?
Yeah. So I have my primary coaching company, which is just called veganfitness.com. And that's where I just teach people how to adopt a plant-based lifestyle without sacrificing gains or performance, and just making sure that they check all the boxes and do things the right way, because most people who try to go plant-based may be inspired to go plant-based after watching a movie, and they're like, all right, I'm going to do this. And then they fail miserably because all they do is just cut out meat and dairy from their diet. And then all of a sudden they're in 1,000 calorie deficit and then wondering why their energy levels are lower. It's like, well, you gotta account for that deficit and replace it with more plant foods that provide you, equal or more nutrition. That way you're not having any nutritional gaps or deficiencies, and also retrain your brain to eat a little bit more, because, plant foods are less calorically dense. So you actually have to eat a little bit more volume than what you're used to, because meat and dairy is pretty...
You really got to train your digestive system.
Yeah.
Consume all that fiber.
Or you might not be used to consuming so much fiber. So it might be a little uncomfortable for you to start all of a sudden including like beans and lentils into your diet. So that's my like primary coaching business, where I just teach people how to do that. And obviously I've taken it to like the most extreme level when it comes to bodybuilding, because I mean, that really is putting your body to the topmost level possible for yourself. So if it's suitable for bodybuilding, then it's definitely suitable for the weekend warrior or just the recreational gym lifter. So that's where I like to help people. I don't really train too many people on like how to be a competitive bodybuilder, because it's too much into that, and I don't really love the sport of bodybuilding like I used to. I'd rather just help people, live in alignment with their core values. Because normally if somebody wants to go vegan, there's like a deeper reason behind it, beyond just like, oh, I want to get in shape. Maybe, they believe in the environment and they want to be more conscious with what they put in their body, or animal welfare and things like that. So I just want to make sure that they know that it's possible.
Yep.
And then the other coaching that I do is this is more recent. As of last year, I got into life coaching, and it's been also really fulfilling. I have a program called Intentioneering that kind of blends the engineering mindset with spiritual practices and living intentionally, and making sure that those two are both used in a way that aligns your life to have more meaning, fulfillment, enrichment, purpose, clarity, and really just going through what I went through a couple years ago, when I was at a kind of a dark place in a relationship that just wasn't aligned for me, and then a career that wasn't aligned for me, and then just kind of like slow shift into the life that I have now. I would really love to help people make those same transitions and live a more fulfilling, meaningful, intentional life.
So how did you transition from your engineering space to the space that you are now? doing fitness and, well, actually, I guess focusing more on, changing your diet to something that's more wholesome and fulfilling for you, especially as a vegan?
So like I said, I already had like probably 100,000 followers at the time that I quit. And like I said, I wasn't really monetizing my social media. I was getting approached a lot by different brands. This was back in 2017, maybe. Yeah, late 2017, early 2018. And I had tried to do some coaching before just on the side, and it wasn't working for me. I was just like too spread thin. I was too disorganized. There was too many moving parts. And I was like, this is too much for me. So I stopped. And then that's whenever, things started to escalate with my work and just my dissatisfaction with my work. And I had actually at that time started speaking publicly because I was getting invited to these conferences and festivals because I was the only professional vegan bodybuilder at that time.
That's so cool though.
Yeah,
That's so sick.
I was kind of like standing out, it was like very disruptive in the sport of bodybuilding because there wasn't anybody that was doing it quite like I was with this alternative approach and still having success. Like that's the big difference is like not just being like, oh, you're vegan and lift weights, but like actually having success in the IFBB, which is, as you know, is super challenging to even like once you get to that level. I mean, even placing top 5 is an accomplishment in and of itself. There's guys that go pro and don't ever even get top 5 or first call outs. So pretty much every show I did, I got top or first call outs or top 5.
Okay.
So I was super satisfied with like my success in that sport. And then the more I talked about it, the more people wanted to learn about what I was doing. So that's when I started doing some public speaking at these conferences. And I did one in London, and I'll never forget because I had just got on stage and just winged it for like 30 minutes and just talked about my background and kind of what I was doing and my hopes and dreams of like where I wish to take bodybuilding and kind of inspire people to do the same thing. And afterwards, this guy approached me and he was very kind of emotional and he was like clearly like, experiencing something. And I was like, hey, like what's going on? And he just gave me like a big hug. He's like, can I hug you, man? I was like, yeah, for sure. So he gives me like a big hug. He's like, man, I just want to thank you because I really believe that you helped save my mom's life. My mom was suffering from type 2 diabetes and her condition was really bad. She couldn't even get out of bed. And through you, I found out about plant-based eating and taught her how to, like I basically took care of her through a plant-based diet and she was able to reverse a lot of her symptoms and was able to like regain her ability to like walk and move around and just like improve her quality of life. And I was really moved by that because, up until that point, I had only gotten comments of people being like, thanks for sharing this information, but never to that like kind of personal anecdote of somebody really having like an impact on somebody's life. So the entire time on the plane ride back home, I was really conflicted. I was like, man, how many other people are out there that could use this message? And how many other people am I not reaching by spending 10 hours a day in a cubicle and dedicating my energy to that? Like what more of an impact could I make if I did this full time? And that was really kind of the nail in the coffin for me to be like, yeah, I got to do this. Like I'm actually doing the world a disservice by not doing it, as opposed to doing myself a service and just getting paid for this career that I just didn't like. So that Monday I walked into work and had convinced myself that I was going to be okay and just like it's too soon to quit my job. And we went through our Monday morning meeting. We were talking about fucking corroding pipe, just like always, and assets that needed to be
corroding
pipelines. That's and vessels and tanks and pressure relief valves and all that fun stuff. And I was just like, what am I doing here? I was like, I hate this shit. I hate this shit. I was and like everybody was going around the room kind of updating the supervisor on their project. And I was looking at this guy talk about his project and he was just so passionate about it. And I was like, man, this guy really likes what he does and he really cares about what he does. I don't give a shit about what I'm doing and my projects. I don't give a shit if they succeed, if they fail, we save money, spend money. I don't care. And when it came to me, my turn to share, I was just like, I'm done. I got up from the table, like almost impulsively. And just the last thing I remember was like going straight to my boss's office and just like word vomit came out of my mouth. I was like, I'm putting in my notice because I'm going to quit. And he was kind of shocked. And I was like, as soon as I said it, I found this like rush of like adrenaline and fear. I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? and I was talking about it with him, and he was asking me what I was going to do. And I was kind of trying to explain to him what I was doing through social media and, bodybuilding and veganism. And he just didn't get it. He just didn't understand. And he was like really skeptical of me doing something that I might regret. And, to his credit, I understand. But I was just like, no, I got to do this. And so I quit. And then a few months went by before I was making any money. But what was interesting is that all of these new opportunities started to just fall into my lap. Right after I had quit, The Game Changers, which is like a documentary on Netflix that highlights plant-based athletes, gave me a ring, and they were like, hey, we want you to be a part of this documentary. And I was just blown away, because I was just like, if I would have been working, I wouldn't have been able to participate in this particular project. And then, I met my business partner. I, was going to all these different events and all these opportunities. And I was just like, man, everything just started to really just accelerate.
I actually feel like I watched that.
Yeah, you may have.
I think I did.
So according to Netflix, this is like insider information about Netflix, is that it's one of the, if not still the number one spot for the most watched documentary on Netflix ever, which is
holy shit,
pretty crazy, the amount of people that it reached. And to be a part of that was really special, because it was just like, I had never thought I was going to be on Netflix in a documentary for doing what I do. And then obviously that brought a lot of other opportunity. And then that's after kind of like, I had already had my coaching business established by then, and then everything kind of took off.
That's so fire, dude.
Yeah.
Man, nobody's reaching out to me for being the first anime bodybuilder. Fucking bullshit, dude.
Just make your own doc. Make your own documentary.
My own documentary.
Like Kanye did, bro. I don't know if you watched the Kanye. He just had a guy follow him around, just being like, yeah, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. Like,
no way.
Yeah. Go watch it. I think it's called Yay on Netflix. He just had a guy that was just like, before he had ever been Kanye, he just had a guy film him, because he was just like, I'm going to blow up. It's like gonna happen. So that's the kind of mentality you got to have. You just got to know for sure in your gut that it's going to become a reality, whatever your dream is. And if you really live by that and have that as your kind of framework to make decisions, then, it's an inevitability. It's not a possibility. It's a sure thing.
That's kind of sick, honestly. But it's true, bro. You really have to have that mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to know what you're doing is what you want to do, and have your full, 100% fuck yes commitment to it.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's a great kind of like code to live by, is that if it's not a fuck yes, then it's a fuck no.
Yeah.
So if it's not a full body yes, then it means you got to pass on it. Because if you only do things that are fully aligned with who you are and your mission and your vision, then it's only ever going to take you to that timeline, like living that best, highest timeline of yours that you envision for yourself.
Speaking of that, who's that couple again? The Beckers, right?
Yeah. Right? You've heard that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Benjamin and Azria.
Yeah. Dude, they're amazing. I love them.
Yeah, it was a great podcast.
So speaking of the full fuck yes relationship, you yourself have been through a whirlwind of a relationship journey, and now you're getting married to her, right?
Yeah.
Dude, that's fucking phenomenal.
Just over 2 months away getting married.
Wow, bro. Yeah. I'm happy for you. That's so sick. That's so sick.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember Nimai was just helping me with my relationship issues back when we first met.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, I don't know what to do, but I'm about to go to my ex's birthday and just watch as her new man basically leads the charge on her birthday.
That's a tough one, man. That's a tough experience, just to put yourself in your shoes and think about what that would be like. I remember, and that's why, I had kind of, I think I told you this at the time, I had kind of experienced something similar in my relationship, where I had kind of thrown my girlfriend a birthday party, and we were split up, and she had kind of invited somebody that she was interested in, and kind of watching it all unfold in front of me. And I was just like, this really hurts, I ended up just not being okay with that. But, here we are 2-3 years later from that experience, and couldn't be more in love and more connected, and the deepest relationship that I've ever been in. And so much of the fact that I'm committing to this one for the long run.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go, baby.
Yeah.
Dude, that's fucking beautiful. I want to point this out. I think that you and I have had this experience that I think a lot of men can relate to, but I'm pretty sure that you and I have both actually started. So, early on in the early stages of our life, I'm sure you and I both went through some traumatic events with women that made us become very guarded, protective of our own feelings, potentially in a way, while not totally intentional, definitely manipulative in a form to protect ourselves, right? Not always so completely open doors to the females that we're talking to, and in that trauma, these new partners that we gained that we really, really appreciated, we, I guess, created trauma for them by, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but I feel like you and I might have done a little bit of fuckboying and stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in the early stages of these relationships.
Yeah. I was a grade A fuckboy.
Grade A fuckboy.
Yeah, grade A fuckboy for sure.
Damn.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
yeah. So I mean, for me, I just remember like, goddamn, all these girls broke my heart when I was a kid, and like, just fucking, even down. I mean, I feel like maybe it started with my mom and like my terrible relationship with her off the bat, because she was always like very, very controlling and like conservative type of like Catholic. Where she's like, oh, you're the only child, you need to be absolutely perfect. So she had all these expectations and standards for me, growing up to, be a straight A student, GT engineer or doctor. You need to get your PhD. You need to play 6-7 instruments. You need to sing. You need to be in every single sport. Also be an Eagle Scout. All of this is for your resume, because we need to make sure that, I don't know, that's what they want.
Yeah.
Carry on the family name, I guess. But and from that, I feel like control was something that I became kind of scared of.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, like a controlling girlfriend, like fuck. I'm immediately like, what is that word?
Like apprehensive or like hesitant.
Yeah. I guess apprehensive works, but essentially like very distant.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to. I'm scared of that control, right? So I want to make sure that I want to feel free. I want to be a free person. I want to be able to do the things that I want to do. Not feel like I'm weighed down by the expectations of another that I need to meet. So I remember down to like these relationships, after being heartbroken in the past, even seeing my first RuneScape girlfriend following another guy, and a variety of other things. When I met this new person in my life that I really, really appreciated, I would just be too scared to commit. I would explain to her that, yeah, no, I really enjoy your time, and like I want to continue to spend time with you, but like, I just moved to San Diego, just got out of a breakup, like I just know that I'm not there right now. And while I would say that, I would still be going around talking and spending time with other females as well. And I wouldn't always clarify like, oh, I'm with this female for this reason. I'd just be like, oh, I was spending time with somebody else, or something that was like very vague.
Yeah. Like
I'd
a half truth or a vagueity or something that you could.
I'm
really
like, oh, as long as I'm not lying, it's not a lie. But but I'm definitely withholding information for the sake of probably not losing her.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, man. I can relate to that. My I guess my kind of root is a little bit different, just because my kind of fear of commitment came from seeing my parents' relationship. And my parents are still together, and they have like a deeply, deeply loving relationship whenever it's great. And most of the time it is, especially like this later chapter of their lives. It's so great. But whenever, I was younger, they were two immigrants that had come over from Argentina, two spiritual, renunciants. So they didn't come over with much and didn't have much material wealth. And we grew up in a very difficult environment where money was always like a very, scarce resource. So obviously that creates tension within any relationship, especially when you have to provide for 3 kids. So seeing the, difficulties that they went through, and created a lot of volatility in their relationship, which as a young child, you don't really have the awareness to understand. You kind of take on these patterns of making everything about you. The kind of world is happening because of you. So if there's problems in the relationship, it's because of, you. And maybe like for me, I kind of felt like I was a burden, and that if I was experiencing anything like a challenging emotion like fear or, anything that a kid would go through and they see their parents fighting, I wouldn't share it. I would just kind of like compartmentalize it, put it aside, because I didn't want to add to the situation. I didn't want my emotions to be a contribution to the overall kind of stress of the environment. So I got really good at kind of hiding what I was feeling. And that pattern, followed me through adolescence into adulthood, into my early like real relationships, to where I never really allowed my partners in because I was too afraid that my emotions were either too much or going to not be understood. And it was almost like I didn't know where to start. Like I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the practice of being able to articulate what I was experiencing because I'd never practiced it before. So it just kind of like, it was what it was. And I would kind of compartmentalize and deal and pretend and avoid and lie and omit and tell half truths and just things that weren't true to kind of project this image that everything was okay. And, it wasn't until I really started, maybe the end of my the relationship before the one I'm in now, kind of had to confront some things that I knew were there, but didn't really ever think that they were a problem. It's like, oh, that's normal, like it's not on my mind right now. So it's not affecting me, but there were these very deeply unresolved childhood wounds that I had never processed and were still very much influencing who I was and the decisions I was making today. But I was just unaware. I had these blind spots and these patterns. So that's kind of how I entered this relationship that I'm in now. And again, brought those patterns with me unconsciously, and they just matched up perfectly with, Bianca's patterns of people pleasing and not sharing how she felt and kind of overextending herself and, just not standing up for herself and things like that. So it fit perfectly. And this is why I still really believe that like, we attract the perfect teachers. And for me, Bianca has been my most important teacher in my life because she's allowed me to learn more about myself. Like really relationships are just mirrors. Like it's a person holding up a mirror for you to learn about yourself. And she's done that so gracefully and so unconditionally with like so much love and grace and like acceptance for me that it finally allowed me to feel safe enough to be able to be like open up my armor and be like, oh, here's all the ugly, messy shit.
That's so fucking beautiful.
That I too afraid to show anybody in the world, but you made me feel safe for the first time. And even at my worst and even at my like most out of integrity time that I was ashamed of and had all this guilt and everything, you were able to accept it with love. And that just completely changed me altogether. And, that was a result of us going through a breakup. And actually before that, we hired some relationship coaches that helped us kind of bring to the surface a lot of these patterns and behaviors that we were both kind of like, co-creating. And, we ended up splitting up. And it was the most challenging time in my life up to this point. And I just decided to commit myself to this work of like really, excavating and discovering what parts of myself I've been neglecting and not accepting and kind of like separating myself from because it was too emotional. It was too hard for me to look at. And it was like a full year of that, of just getting coaching, having energy workers, having therapists, like, doing my morning practices, my breath work, my journaling. Like I really didn't want to operate from a place of unconscious default. I really wanted to be intentional with who I was and how I showed up, regardless of how scary it was. Because my fear was like, it's unsafe to share how I feel or unsafe to share my truth. And I had to learn that it is safe to tell your truth and share that with somebody. And you're always going to be okay if you, learn how to express yourself in a healthy and kind way. And it's always going to take you to a place where you were meant to be if you operate from that place of truth. So now I feel like I'm much more equipped to be able to express myself. But back then, man, I was a different person. And I have so much love and compassion for that version of myself because I just didn't know any better. I didn't have the awareness that I do now. So anybody that has made a mistake before, and we all have, and maybe you've been kind of like, you know, just criticizing yourself and shaming yourself and telling yourself like you should have known better, like how can you be a little bit kinder with yourself and just more compassionate with yourself? Because unless you have the experience, you don't know what you don't know. And once you make it through that experience and gain this awareness and learn, then you're easily able to look back and be like, oh, duh, the answer's right there, you know? But like, how would you treat like a 5-year-old if you went up to a 5-year-old and you were like, hey, solve this calculus problem? And they're like, I don't know how to do it. Would you be like, oh, you freaking idiot? How could you not know how to do it? It's so easy. It's so simple. Like they just haven't learned yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't treat a child that way. So like, why would you treat your previous self that way? Like you just didn't know. Not to say that you didn't, you're absolving yourself of accountability. Like 100% you should take accountability and responsibility for how you showed up. And once you know better, then it's your responsibility to show up better and continue to make those improvements regardless of how uncomfortable it might be.
I think compassion and acceptance are just extremely overlooked in a lot of relationships. I think that's a fucking beautiful blessing that you and I have had to have in the relationships that we have had. Being able to be in a space where we feel safe, a space where we feel accepted, a space where we feel like we're seen, and so we can reveal all that is us, I think is the most beautiful space that we can be in, especially in such an intimate relationship. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the people these days do not have that, and they do not get that. There's a lot of relationships that still continue, not out of love and acceptance, but purely out of fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my mentors. Sorry to jump in. I just want to say this because he pointed out something to me that I had never thought of before. His name is Peter Crone. I've had him on my podcast.
Oh yeah.
And I freaking love this guy. He is so intelligent and wise and insightful. And he says that many of us are not actually in relationships with each other. We're in relationships with our fears, meaning that a lot of our decisions and the way we show up is to like as an act of self-preservation, to keep our safety, to protect ourselves in certain ways. So we are not ever able to really truly show up in the relationship because we're always operating from a place of fear rather than love and acceptance and completeness and wholeness, which is a whole different way of operating. So I fully agree and resonate with what you say, that like this, like intimacy is what you're talking about. And, you know, you can only meet somebody as deeply as you've met yourself. You can only love somebody as deeply as you've learned to love and accept yourself fully.
And that's a really hard thing for many of us to do, for sure. Especially when one of our, I think, core tendencies as humans is to judge ourselves in order for us to become better. Have that anxiety that, you know, we might die, or we might, you know, this one thing might cause the end of our lives, even though it won't, you know.
It feels like it.
It feels like it.
Yeah, it feels like it.
Because I guess our bodies are just tuned to protect ourselves in that way. Yeah. And I think that's our power as humans, is to rise above that with our consciousness, is to have that compassion and that emotion, to be aware that, hey, like this isn't the matter. Like I know more than this. I have a consciousness over this, and this doesn't have control over me. I'm not going to die. Like, I will be okay, right? And that I deserve the compassion and the love. And I think that's really hard for most people to do because it requires so much mental effort. And even more so, the hardest thing I feel like to do in this day and age is to overcome your feelings. You must, like, in order for you to really exceed, I think you must train your body to live off of good emotions in doing what you're doing. And that's an incredibly difficult thing. And because there's so many variables, right? The variables could be like, oh, you don't enjoy what you're doing in life, or like you don't enjoy what's going on in your relationship, or you're not feeding yourself, so you don't have good hormonal health, or you don't have good health in general, or good mental health. You're not seeing a therapist, or there's just so many factors, and it all comes down to basically health, I guess, just all different types of health. But it's like there's so much going on. Most of us aren't even thinking about those things.
Yeah.
Most of us are thinking about these surface level things that we have to take care of on a day-to-day basis. Be like, oh, we got to do this. We got to do this shit. So it's like how much more effort is required for us to really look inwards in order to take care of that first. I think it would just be amazing for people to continue to put this out in the world and let people know that, like, look inwards at what's going on in yourself first. And I think in that way we can, progress our lives to be better.
For sure. I'm 100% agreement with that. Like having the space to really go inwards and introspect and ask yourself, or just notice what's happening in your body. Your body is always sending you signals. This vessel, it's so intelligent and it's always working for you. And it's like we find ourselves kind of just operating it and just driving it, and it's like some people, like whenever they drive their cars, there's like a check engine light that's on and you're just like, nah, it'll go away. I'm just gonna choose to ignore it and just keep driving. Or there's like a wobbly wheel and you're like, I'm just gonna keep driving and until the wheel falls off. And if you don't learn how to listen to your body when it whispers, you're gonna have to listen to it when it yells at you. And if you can practice finding stillness, finding presence, and just noticing what signals it's sending you, whether it's in the form of, a thought, or whether it's in the form of a consistent feeling or emotion or a sensation, and like noticing where it's at and really kind of trying to describe what that is, and just to yourself even, then you can start to really be more aware of like what's happening and like do something about it. Like really just like learn how to kind of have some type of resolution. And sometimes the feeling is like, just having a good cry,
Yeah.
Like you don't have to have it necessarily
just expression,
a
bro.
reason to cry.
Like, like these emotions, this energy is real. And sometimes we need to release it in some sort of fashion.
Yeah.
No matter what way you release it, it needs to be released.
Well, because it's
otherwise
stored.
Right.
It's stored.
Right. And as long as it's stored, it'll always be there.
Yeah.
Until you release it.
Yeah.
But there's so many different ways to release it, which is funny. And people aren't really aware of the ways that they release it. Sometimes they do it unconsciously. Sometimes they don't do it with the consciousness or awareness of how it could affect others. So it's like you could go to the gym, you could fucking train as hard as you can, express yourself that way. You could create some music, you could play music, you could play an instrument like we were talking about before. Just that's another beautiful way for you to express your feelings. Or you could create a no-face Instagram, go on all the accounts that you fucking hate, and then fucking tear them apart for the things they said, or for, I don't know, like accuse them for being on steroids or some crazy shit. I don't know. Yeah. There's a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Or you could go to therapy and speak to somebody instead of having to comment it on social media. But everybody takes it out in some sort of fashion. And if not, then that anxiety just fucking holds them down like a ball and chain.
Yeah, man. I feel like, I really feel like that everything we do is in the belief that by doing it, we'll feel better than what we feel right now. Like we go to the bathroom because we'll feel more relieved after we go to the bathroom. We go eat because we feel like we'll feel better once we satisfy this hunger, and sometimes people, sending mean messages or mean comments to people online, that's their way of feeling better than what they feel in the moment. So I have had to learn through a lot of interactions being online to have compassion for people that do that, and recognize that that person is suffering, that person is hurting, and I can either respond back with the same type of response that they're probably used to, which means like, fight fire with fire, insult them back, say something, mean or hurtful to them, or I can choose to ignore it, send compassion through the quantum field, be like, sending you love, bro, and delete you, block you. Or I can respond in a way that shows them a different response than what they're used to, you know? And I've really been practicing that for the last couple years. Whenever somebody will come and leave like a really mean or ignorant comment to me, and I'll be like, hey man, I understand how you feel. I could see why you feel that way. And you know, this is just my way of expression, like I'm just doing what I like and not hurting anybody. So this is why I do what I do, you know, just like something like super simple like that. And then 9 times out of 10, people will be like, yeah, man, I'm sorry. Like, you know, didn't mean it, whatever else. And it's just like, you know, we need more of that. Like,
I was just joking.
Yeah, I was just joking. Or sometimes just want a response out of you because they, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, if we could learn how to kind of practice like doing the healthy things that actually make us feel better than what we feel right now, and learning how to integrate those practices, like instead of, you know, numbing yourself. Like numbing is a form of like, you know, maybe through alcohol or different substances or certain relationships or whatever, that's not allowing you to fully like feel and process what you're going through. Then again, you're going to store it, and it's going to manifest in the form of like maybe depression, maybe frustration, maybe anger, maybe it'll even manifest into like a physical sickness because your body is just like, dude, just process this. Like we don't know how to process this. So, you know, there's different ways. Like meditation is a really great way to just observe what's going on and just allowing yourself the non-judgment of the feeling to come up in its fullness and whatever raw expression that comes out. And sometimes it can feel really weird. Like if you've ever let out like a primal scream, I don't know if you've ever done that before, but it's like a full primal like scream from like a guttural just place where you're letting out all this rage and anger that you might not have. Or maybe it's just coming out in the form of tears. Like you just like cry for no like real reason, but it's just like your body's just asking to release it, you know? And then other things like somatics, you know, like somatic therapy and different ways to release this energy that's stored in your body, you know, whether that's through breath work. Sometimes, you know, breath work's a really great way to kind of move energy and kind of replenish it with new, fresh energy in the form of like blood and just kind of enter all these spaces. So that, I don't know if you've ever done breath work where you feel like your body is like electrified. I don't know if you've ever done it to that degree.
I've done some.
Okay. Yeah. I've had full on psychedelic experiences.
Tinglings and psychedelic experiences.
I've had full on psychedelic experiences through breath work and incredibly cathartic experiences where I've gotten to process emotions and like memories that I didn't even know were there. And afterwards just feel like my body recalibrating itself and just feeling lighter and feeling more clear and just overall better. So yeah, if anybody's listening out there, just like find whatever works for you. I would really encourage you to kind of lean in to those emotions and find out what's underneath them. So that way you can maybe change your perspective about how to, you know, have those little processes in the moment. And a lot of like, from what I learned in therapy, one of the best ways to do that is by naming what you're experiencing in the moment and kind of like giving it a name. So it's like, yeah, I'm just feeling very anxious right now because, you know, I'm about to show up to this podcast and I don't know how many people are going to listen, and I don't like being on camera and all of these things that might be going through somebody that could be in my position right now. You know, we're about to have an uncomfortable conversation because you made a mistake with, you know, or outside of the agreements of a relationship, and be like, yeah, I'm feeling very ashamed of what I did, and I'm bringing it to you because I want to, you know, have the opportunity to explain why I did what I did and understand myself better and create deeper senses of intimacy with you. You know what I mean? Like just being able to name it is really helpful. And then just kind of going from there.
Being able to name it. Yeah. Like name it as in
just like 3 words. I feel what?
Gotcha. I see.
You can start with a pretty broad emotion, like I feel angry.
Right.
Okay. What are you feeling angry about? Mm-hmm. You know, what in particular is making you angry? And then you can ask more questions and kind of like use that as kind of a thread that you can start to pull and unravel and understand a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. And then if you guys want to support us, we're both part of Young LA, so you can use code Nyle or code Nimai. You can both use them, love.
Appreciate it.
And if you want to further support the podcast, also huge supplements, which is the supplements I take. You can also use code Nyle for 10% discount. That's all the pre-workouts, the proteins, even the bodybuilding ancillary supports that I take every day for if I'm running anything PED related whatsoever, to make sure that my organs are healthy. But the naming thing, I really align with that. I know that one way that's very, very constructive for most people to like do, to really have conversations, especially with their loved ones or in their relationships, in a constructive way that I've learned from a lot of other places and areas, has to speak and take accountability of your feelings, but speak in that first person sense instead of being accusatory and being like, oh, you do this or you did that, right? Is speaking in your emotions, like I feel this because of this, or I feel that because of that, right? And I think that's one of the most phenomenal ways to really like go about having somebody, especially your partner, see you through what you're going through. And if they truly care about you, then I would assume that they would be empathetic enough to try to feel what you're feeling and thus make their actions revolve around your feelings as well as theirs, rather than just, oh, you fucking hurt me, or you fucking clogged the goddamn toilet again, didn't fucking fix it. Some shit. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I agree with that. That's what's so great about Bianca, my fiance, is that she was the first kind of person to show me that ability to be able to express what you're feeling without kind of like making it into a personal attack. And whenever you're feeling attacked, you normally just go straight to the defensive. And when you're defending your perspective, you're not really creating the space to understand what somebody else is trying to explain. So that was a really big one for me, because, you know, when I feel attacked, that's kind of was my default. I was like justifying why I was doing what I was doing and not really just trying to understand what her experience was like. So that's something that I've greatly improved on over the past few years, is to really hear and see what she's saying, and then even repeating it back to her before I say how I'm feeling, because that reassures her that I'm actually listening to what she's telling me, in the sense of I can be like, okay, I understand that so what I'm hearing is that whenever I forget to do this thing, maybe it's take out the trash, that it's making you feel like you're not considered, or that your space isn't being respected. And although it's not my intention to make you feel disrespected, it was just an oversight on my part. And then you talk about like kind of the corrective action, like moving forward, I'll do my best to take out the trash because I know it makes you feel like I care about you and consider you in my actions.
You want to put your foot forward to show that you care about her feelings.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So that simple framework has given us such a great kind of like toolbox to communicate and have challenging conversations, to where it's like, you know, it's never, you know, this is something that our coaches told us too, is that it's not me versus you when you're in conflict with somebody. It's us versus the miscommunication. We're on the same team.
Yeah.
There's just a miscommunication that's existing between us. And to some degree, it just might be a pre-programming that we brought into this relationship. And we're consciously working to solve this miscommunication and move forward in a progressive way. So that automatically kind of puts you on the same team as somebody, instead of like pointing the finger. It's like, no, we're both pointing at the same thing and be like, how do we resolve this together as a team?
Mm-hmm. That miscommunication is a bitch, dude.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
I think it's literally the soul for every issue.
Yeah. But it's also a gateway. It's also a gateway to deeper understanding and deeper intimacy with somebody. So
once you get through that,
if you're both able and willing to make it through that, you know what I mean? Yeah. You can't just chalk it up and be like, it's a miscommunication. We're closer now. No, it's like, okay, now I understand where you're coming from, why you said that, why you did that. And now you understand where I'm coming from, why I said that, why I did that. How can we come to a mutual agreement, move forward, and not let this be a thing that harbors resentment or whatever, you know?
I do feel that a lot. The one thing that I'm just like, what the fuck about that I'm curious about though, is like when we start putting trauma into the other person, when we start creating trauma in our relationships, like, because I'm going to be open and transparent about this, and I don't really know exactly whether or not this is something I can share fully, so I'm going to make it as vague as possible, but I do really want to place this out there because this is somewhere where I am, and it's very important And hopefully, I mean, I want to respect her space as well.
Yeah.
But at the moment where I am with my ex, we have decided that it may be valuable for us to essentially have just complete space and see it as like we are currently not friends. And for that reason, the reason for that being that I know that I, especially in the early stage of a relationship, like I told you, being a grade A fuckboy, had put a lot of bullshit on her plate, a lot of fucking shit that she learned from and that she copied herself in order to protect herself, that now in her new relationships she has realized is coming to surface. And this is something that I have finally healed from. This is something that I have finally reflected on after her. Luckily, our breakup has allowed me to reflect on this. But now that she has, now that she is single again, I think now she's finally seeing this all come to fruition in this own space where like, oh, she really feels this for somebody. Now she seems to be, reenacting or doing the things that maybe I had done early in the relationship. And unfortunately that has caused her some issues as well, similar issues that we had, you know. So I'm praying for her and I'm hoping the best for her, and I'm sending her love from afar. But this is something that I'm always worried about, and this is something that I always want to make sure that I don't do for anybody else. I want to learn from, because I know for a fact that if I continue this, I myself too will probably not find a successful and beautiful relationship as you had if I continue to carry on this kind of trauma. So that's one thing that I'm always like we can definitely work things out, and I always want to work things out, but like how do you, like, where's it, like where's the separation where it's like you realize like you're not only solving miscommunication, but maybe we've done things that have created these wounds that we're carrying with us. Like, how do we heal from that? I don't know. It's just so complicated.
Yeah, it's hard. That's a hard space to be in, because it requires a certain level of like acceptance too, that you might not end up talking and being friends like you hope for. Maybe the pain is too great and the trigger is too present. And sometimes that space is for each individual to be able to heal outside of the kind of intensity of the, you know, cycle between you two. Like I had to go through that. Like me and my fiance went through a period where we agreed to never speak to each other, at least for the foreseeable future, and completely move forward with the understanding that we're not going to be together. And for the time being, we can't even be friends, because we need to find ourselves. We need to explore and get our needs met through other people, or whatever that looks like, whether it's companionship or romantic relationship or even falling in love with another person. We had to come to that, you know, place. And it was one of the hardest things that I had to do, was to be like, you know, because we both were like there, and we're like, man, I have so much love for you. And like, why can't we just make this work? Like, why can't we just do it right now? Like, why can't we figure things out? And it just needed space to breathe. And through that experience, you know, I kind of share a little bit more of mine, where I went back and I was like, I don't want to repeat these cycles again. I don't want to not be able to share my emotions, and I don't want to have all this guilt and shame. So I'm going to really feel everything that I feel about this breakup, and process it and lean into it, and like forgive myself and learn how to forgive myself for what pain I caused another person, and just be better moving forward, and not find myself in a position where I would ever do something out of integrity or hurt my partner in that way again, because I don't want to go through this again. So, and what's interesting about that is, because in a vacuum, you might be able to do that, you know, when you're not associating with anybody, you're not engaging or, you know, entering a new relationship with somebody else. But what's interesting is that the patterns like will reemerge. They'll remanifest in maybe a new way with another person, and then you kind of realize that it wasn't the other person that I had put this kind of like blame on, like I'm the common denominator, and here I am again finding myself in the same situation. So what am I going to do differently this time? How am I going to show up differently? How am I going to speak my truth? How am I going to communicate what I'm feeling so that, you know, it's clear, we both have a transparent, clear understanding of where I stand and where you are, and be okay with the fact that if it's not going to move forward, be okay with that, you know? And again, something that I learned through relationships is that you can solve many problems with one person, or find many people to solve one problem, if that makes sense. So if you find yourself in this cycle of like, oh, every time I get close to somebody, you know, I start to kind of like distance myself and withhold and lie, or, you know, seek out other connection because it's too scary to allow myself to go in, then, you know, you're always just going to like start again and start again and start again, and like kind of like abandon the progress when you get to that depth with a new person. Or you can choose to move forward with one person and really heal these maybe patterns that are really challenging to heal. But again, once you are aware of them and learn how to show up differently and move forward and through them, then you don't have to kind of like reconfront them every single time. Does that make sense?
It does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. It's like, if you've been through so many relationships and it's the same issue over and over again, what exactly is it? Is it really them? Or maybe we should like, maybe be a little bit more conscious about what we're doing, you know, look inwards, maybe just a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you tell me?
Go ahead.
So I know a little bit about this, but I know some of the viewers don't. Can you tell me a little bit about like what exactly was the problem that, if you don't mind, obviously you don't have to share anything you don't feel comfortable with, but what exactly was the problem that happened throughout your relationship, and what like grew? What was that, like that seed that grew and then that caused you guys to separate? And then when you came back, like how did that go as well?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of alluded to it earlier. It was my fear for telling the full truth of what I was feeling and experiencing. I didn't have necessarily the words for it or the ability to have the courage to go through and like share things like, oh, I really like you. And for example, like whenever me and her first met, I was fresh out of a breakup. I was actually still living with my ex in the separate bedroom, and I met her and I was just like, man, she's so awesome. She's incredible. She lives across the country. So I don't even know if it's going to work out or pan out, but I really like talking to her. And, you know, I also am fresh out of a breakup and haven't healed. I haven't like had any space from this relationship to jump into another one, but I just couldn't really share that with her. I didn't know how, you know, because I was too afraid I was going to lose her. And she was going to be like, well, I'm looking for, you know, a committed relationship. So if you want to, you know, explore yourself, then this isn't going to work, you know, and I'm going to move forward. So selfishly, I didn't share that I was, you know, having other conversations and entertaining other conversations and things like that. And, you know, eventually that same kind of pattern kept happening in the relationship. And I was unfaithful to her one time and never shared it with her. I completely told myself I was going to take it to the grave. And a couple of years later, after we, you know, had already built businesses, we lived together, all these things, I, you know, had to come to this really, you know, deep rooted, painful, shameful thing that I stuffed away so down and pretended like I believed my own bullshit, like it didn't happen. And whenever we hired these coaches, I was able to like find the courage to be like, if I don't share this, if I don't speak this and tell the truth about what I did, then I'll never be able to live with myself. Like I'll keep finding myself, I'll hate myself, and I'll keep showing up or accepting love or relationships to the degree to which I hate myself. And I was like, I have to share this. So I shared it. You know, we tried to work it out, didn't work. We broke up and, you know, we tried kind of that sticky period where we're like trying and it's not working, trying, not working.
How long was that for?
9 months.
Of the breakup? And that was
almost a year.
After how long of seeing each other?
Close to like 3-4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, you know, through that whole process, you know, it was really, really hard. And, you know, we ended up completely splitting and then coming back together after, just by chance, or maybe not by chance, but after we both had like completely accepted the end of that relationship and had done our own work and really explored ourselves and healed and like continued to commit ourselves to this like inner work, because we both wanted to attract a relationship that was reflective of who we are now and what type of love that we demand and what type of love that we want to give. And it just so happened that we reconnected and we both felt this strong difference in each other and were able to process, the pain in the past and things like that. And even when we got back together, it was kind of like, are we making a mistake? Like, are we really going to try this again and end up, hurting each other again? But luckily we had both done our work. We had hired a relationship therapist as well to help us navigate any things that might come up, around trust and safety and communication. And we both just like stuck with it. And now we're at like a really, really great place with each other and have so much love and like just deep trust for one another that wouldn't have been possible if we didn't like completely separate and find ourselves and become an individual again, and then show up like a whole individual to a relationship rather than two incomplete people that kind of like were codependent and, had our own patterns. And we still have patterns, but now it's just different ones.
I think many people don't realize that it's sometimes those traumatic events that create that transformation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I share, the fact that I was unfaithful, like with like ownership and, and not like, of course I feel terrible about making that mistake and being selfish and all those things, but I share it because not many people talk about that. Like not many people are willing to openly admit that they fucked up. And I think we need more people to do that and show that there's a possibility to learn from our mistakes and just choose to be better once you know better. And that's like what I hope to inspire to maybe anybody who's listening, is that like, it's inevitable to make mistakes. We're human, we're not perfect. We're always learning and we're always growing, but you don't have to crucify yourself for the rest of your life for making a mistake. You can learn to forgive yourself and move forward from it.
I'm really happy for you guys that you've seen that growth, especially when you separated and you did your own work yourself. That was something that I was just, honestly, I was in tears about, but just tears of pure joy to see my ex go through so much growth after we had separated. Like coming back together, she almost seemed like a completely different person, but just like a grown person.
Yeah.
Which was really cool to see. I mean, there's always still more space for growth, but I only wish the best for her and her continued growth, and I'm hoping that's the same with me. And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people, because in these relationships you get comfortable and you get used to these relationships, and what's the fucking hardest thing is that complete change. It's not just a change of your like lifestyle, it's a change of everything that you believe to be true in your reality. It's just like sometimes it just can't be done. And the problem is, if it's a relationship that's just not working, sometimes it requires that traumatic break in order for you maybe both to change in whatever ways you need to. And I guess accepting that is probably just the hardest thing.
Yeah. Just learning to have gratitude for it, like how grateful can you be for her as a teacher?
Yeah.
For you to really learn these lessons. And it's unfortunate that there was pain that had to be experienced in order to have this growth. But, what a beautiful teacher for you. And she's going to be a big one for you. I mean, clearly. So
yeah,
there's a lot of
there's
gratitude.
No greater teacher than this relationship that I had.
Yeah, there's a lot of gratitude and appreciation to be had for that.
So I'm only hoping that the same happens to her, Yeah. I'm truly, truly, truly grateful. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. However many years I have left.
Yeah. I feel you, bro.
So for your relationship, what did you guys exactly do when you came back together? I mean, I know that you guys kind of just ran into each other at the gym, right?
Yeah.
And then you're just like, yo, holy shit, what's up? It's been a year. Like, do you want to hit a workout or get
No,
food or something?
She offered me Reiki. I actually
Oh
saw
yeah,
her.
it was Reiki.
I actually saw her and just kind of skipped a beat for a second and just like awkwardly just
I can feel that, dude.
pivoted.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, she's over there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go this way. But she saw me and she, was kind enough to come over and just like, hey, how's it going? And we just chatted for a little bit. And, I like the same kind of like love that you have for your ex, where you're just like, man, I'm happy for you. Like, we asked her straight up, you seen other people? And she's like, yeah, I've been seeing some other people dating around. And I'm like, I'm genuinely happy for you. Like, good for you. It makes me happy to feel like you're getting, your needs met and exploring yourself and learning about yourself. Like, I'm genuinely happy for you. Mm-hmm. And, for whatever reason, she decided to, offer me Reiki and felt like there was a shift within me. And we, just both felt totally different in some ways. And then the rest was kind of history. We decided to move forward together and really openly talk about a lot of things and agreements and conditions that we both felt like we needed in order to make a successful relationship. And we both did our best to, adhere to those.
Craziness. Was there what happened in that Reiki where you guys just decided to move
it's
forward?
Interesting. Reiki, I don't know if who's familiar, listening to this podcast with Reiki, but Reiki it's how do I put it? It's channeling universal energy to help your chakras find clearance so that energy can clearly flow through each one of your chakras. And, we have these different energy centers, and somebody who's attuned to Reiki has the sensitivity to pick up subtle differences, or like by placing their hands over these chakra centers. So you can feel, at least from what I've told, we all have the ability, I think, we're like highly sensitive beings, but I think that with training, you can have like a higher level of sensitivity and acuity to those subtle differences. Mm-hmm. And it's ironic because she was like kind of scanning me, and she was like, I feel like a much bigger difference in your like heart chakra, like blasted wide open, you know what I mean? And some lighterness of like being like, before I had like some really dark, deep heaviness that I was like kind of carrying with me and stuff. So she felt it on like a, energetic level, I guess you could say. So that probably gave her a lot more confidence to be like, okay, there's actually some like energetic shifts that happened within him that I feel, good about.
So now you guys are getting married, which is fucking phenomenal, dude. What a fucking ride. Thanks. So 4 years, like basically together, then a year off, a year totally apart, basically expecting never to see each other again. And then how long has it been since then?
2 years.
2 years since the breakup?
Yeah.
Wow. Holy shit. And then finally getting married.
Three. Yeah. Well, we broke up in 2020 and then got back together in 2021. So, but it's been like 2 years since we got back together.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So, I guess what work did you guys do during the relationship that now you're in this place where you're like, yeah, this is it. This is a full fuck yes. Like this is the girl I'm going to marry.
I mean, I knew it. I guess I just was too scared to admit it. Mm-hmm. Even when we were in the initial relationship, I just wouldn't allow myself to get to that level of thinking like, oh, this could be my life partner. Like I treated her as so, and I thought it, but I never like said it. And I was too afraid of commitment to do something like marriage. Cause I had my experience and vision and opinions about what marriage was. But yeah, man, after doing the couples therapy, and we still each have our own individual therapists, our own coaches, we don't have a relation or a couples therapist anymore. We had that for about a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of been on our own now for a while, and it just feels right. We just feel both like we're ready to take that next step and commit to each other and create like an intentional life with each other, because we both feel so drawn and connected and, excited for the future. And, I feel great about it. I really do.
Fuck yeah, dude. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
All right. I got these last 2 questions I ask people before they leave. So If you're going to die tomorrow, what is the first thing you would do right now?
Oh man. Yeah. Just somehow connect with the people that I care most about and just try to at least get a word in and just let them know that it was nice knowing you.
It was nice knowing you, bro.
Nice knowing you.
Peace.
Yeah. I'm moving on.
Oh shit. And then if you could have any superpower in the world, what would it be?
Oh man. This one's a tough one. I'd probably I'd probably fly. I feel like flying would be
Nice.
a really dope experience.
Oh yeah.
I could get home really quickly. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Skip
Plus, you
traffic.
could enjoy the ride, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had
Yeah.
a few friends say that too, and made me like almost reconsider my answer because
Yeah, what was
mine
yours?
was to teleport.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's
to
even
be anywhere at any time.
maybe even smarter.
But I feel like flying is like, oh, at least you got to enjoy the ride on the way there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But my thought process is like, oh, I'm scared of heights, so I don't really think about flying
Yeah.
normally.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't be scared of flights or scared of heights. If
Probably
you could
wouldn't if
fly.
I could fly, right?
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So,
Depends on how fast you could fly too. If I could like only cruise at like a bird speed, I probably wouldn't. Maybe I don't know.
yeah,
Because how long would it take me to
Depends.
get somewhere?
Gotcha.
Still,
All right.
I'm sticking with that answer though.
bet. Cool. Nimai Delgado. Where can we find you? Your socials?
Yeah, just
Anything you want to share?
just Nimai Delgado on everything. It's pretty easy to find me. There's not too many Nimais out there.
Yeah.
So just type in Nimai and you'll find my Instagram, YouTube, podcast, all of it.
What's the origins of your name, by the way?
So it's Sanskrit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's sick.
So it means the light from within.
Damn. What the fuck does Nyle mean? Some fucking.
I don't know, you should look it up.
Some fucking Irish name.
Yeah.
My mom just thought it had alliteration with my last name, so she picked it out of a baby
That's
book.
cool too. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I'll look it up. And then, yeah, Nimai, thanks for being on this podcast, man. I really appreciate it. That was fucking amazing.
Yeah, bro. I'm glad we got
Phenomenal.
to connect. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, super sick. Let's definitely get a lift in sometime soon too.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And finally, the best non-cost way to support this podcast, which I really fucking appreciate when you guys do this, but if you could just rate a 5 stars on Apple Podcast and Spotify, that would be literally phenomenal. Maybe even leave a comment on YouTube if you want to. I love seeing the comments, to be honest. Even though I try to avoid comments in general, the podcast comments always make me feel so fulfilled with what I'm doing has a purpose. So I appreciate you guys greatly for that. Yeah. So that's transparent. And then finally, my bodybuilding friendly HRT clinic is the link below where you can get your TRT, HRT, check your hormone level to see if you're doing okay. If you're feeling like you're having some mood swings or some crazy things going on, maybe your testosterone is suppressed, I really advise you guys to get your blood work done with anybody, at least anybody. But if you want to go through my bodybuilding friendly HRT clinic, then you can get your blood work done with them as well. They'll give you a complete team that will educate you on basically everything. You don't even have to accept whatever that they offer you in terms of like medications, but at least they'll help you with your health. So thanks again, guys. Transparent, Nimai.
Peace.
And see you next time.
See you next time.
Peace.
See ya.